We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the June DAP, our second item. For the record and those attending virtually, this meeting is being recorded. This is 7749 Old Georgetown Road. This is a sketch plan, the first time the design advisory panel has seen this. So the presentation or the organization for the meeting today is presentation by the applicant, comments with the panel, and then we also do have a member of the public attending today. We'll give them time to speak if they wish. Okay, I will turn it over to.
Yeah. Matt, did you want to say something first, or I'll take care of it? Okay. Well, thanks for coming today, everyone. And thanks in person. I guess it's the first one since what, January? Since we've done this. That's great. And I haven't been to one of these 8280 Wisconsin Avenue, which obviously moved forward, so it's good to be back. So as we've kind of mentioned before, we've assembled a site here in Bethesda, right at the corner of St. Elmo and Old Georgetown Road. We've assembled a site with basically with three of us as a joint venture. We, Stonebridge, have a parcel, the old jewelry store, which is now a fencing studio for the next couple of years. And then the Brown family has the parcel next to us, which is the old Georgetown Grill. And then the Lincoln family has three smaller parcels to the northeast, which is the kickboxing studio, the health and wellness, and the Bethesda Florist. So we've been able to assemble a large enough site to make something happen. And we obviously come today. I'm sure you've had a chance to see what was posted a couple of weeks ago. Residential project, somewhere north of 200 up to 240 units. Residential, small little bit of retail on the ground floor, conforming to the design guidelines certainly, to the extent the site allows us to. And SK and I will go forward with all of that to show us how we do conform to the design guidelines in the presentation. We're very excited for the site. Obviously, it's a fantastic gateway site. I know gateway gets used quite often on certain spots. This one, is part of the Woodmont Triangle, is a great gateway from Wilson and Arlington Road from the south and west, which allows this residential building to give us tremendous views, pretty much in three different directions. I mean, going north, west, and south. You've got a lot of really good views over top of obviously area that will not be developed higher than it currently is due to the residential nature of the zoning. So again, we think that this site gives the ability for some really fantastic architecture on its own, as sort of that gateway from the south and west. I'm sorry, the south and north and west, as well as giving the opportunity for really neat layouts of residential units within apartment units, with a lot of daylight and views, a lot of that good sustainability that we're all striving for with some of these projects. So anyway, with that, I can get into more details, but I know Chris has got all of that.
You covered a lot of it.
It's a little touch.
Say two things, okay?
Please.
I mean, last 25 years, this has been our home. I think our firm grew up on St. Elmo, and basically we're partly involved in the, master plan, and that first building, Bainbridge Bethesda, was designed according to those guidelines. And this building is exactly similar size in terms of size, mass of the building. So we are really excited, and I think we feel like this is our home. We want to take care of it, and we want to be proud of it. And I let Chris take you through the process.
No pressure there, Chris.
All right, well, good to see everybody again. Just for the record, my name is Chris Huffer with SK&I Architecture. And I'll probably hit on a few key points early on that they've already covered. But as you're aware, and as you mentioned, we're right here, this red dot on St. Elmo and Old Georgetown, right in the center of the Woodmont Triangle District. Just a slightly closer view to kind of show the mix of uses that are around this block. There's two public county garages and mixed use blocks around here, plus highlighting kind of the varying street types the guidelines that are around us from an urban boulevard and mixed use street to these neighborhood connectors. But one thing that this kind of shows really is this corner of our project on St. Elmo and Old Georgetown is really not just St. Elmo and Old Georgetown, it's St. Elmo, Old Georgetown, Arlington, and Wilson. So it's very prime intersection with prime, spot for this corner. As Dave mentioned, as we go through the design, it's one of the things we're very cognizant of where we're putting our focus and design energy for this building is this northern facing side, turning the corner and wrapping on Old Georgetown road here. So just to highlight a few side images, all ones coming down, view from Wilson Lane. So basically coming from Wilson and Old Georgetown, as Dave mentioned, it's going to be a very prominent corner. So that's kind of something that we're pushing and holding on to the design process. But as he mentioned, this yellow building, our yellow building set back is the fencing studio, the old jewelry exchange, the Old Georgetown Grill at the corner, and then moving up St. Elmo and down over to images are the three smaller partials and businesses that they own. So we are zoned CR5, C5, R5 for 175 feet. We're not requesting any additional height. This is all within the prescribed zoning height. We are going in for some additional density. As Dave mentioned, we're roughly 240,000 square feet, roughly 240 units with 3 levels of below grade parking, netting roughly 150 units, 50 parking spaces. Below on the first floor, we are planning for up to roughly 7,500 square feet of retail located at that corner. Plan later, but that's kind of the overall. You can see, in addition to those views going from Wilson and Georgetown here, you can kind of see why we're very cognizant of this elevation is because as you go farther north, especially on Old Georgetown Road, all of the heights of the zoning is so we are at 175 feet.
If they're redeveloped.
Exactly. If so everything's kind of stepping down to the north of us, making us kind of that visual face when approaching Bethesda. So a few of our design goals are obviously to achieve the design goals of the Bethesda plan and design guidelines and provide a dynamic, sustainable, inclusive address through utilizing the recommendations of the downtown plan through building placement, street activation, base variation, floor treatment, reduction of bulk and tower top design, all put together to create a signature residential tower that is scaled, approachable, and engages and enhances the pedestrian experience. So we're just going to kind of go through a few of the basic, siting guidelines first before we get into the massing. So the first, obviously, we're located on 2 streets, Old Georgetown Road and St. Elmo. Old Georgetown Road is an urban boulevard requiring or a recommended step back or build to line of 25 to 30 feet. So you can see here we are providing that current 25-foot setback at a minimum. Right now we're kind of tapering in sod a little bit in the center, so we have some connectivity to the mapping above. That sets back another 3 to 5 feet going through there. So this accommodates the future street section as prescribed by the guidelines. On St. Elmo, which is a downtown mixed-use street, the guidelines recommend up to 15 to 20 foot of a build-to line. We're providing a 15-foot minimum with some additional articulation that steps back a little bit currently. Again, through our conversations with staff, we strive to kind of retweak some massing and have some more connectivity between the tower and the base, which we've created kind of some successful movements with this articulation. See. Obviously, one of the big things is green cover, and we are planning to meet the minimum 35% currently. Obviously, it's early in sketch plan, but we've tested everything to make sure that we have the minimum cover allowable with our future programming of our setbacks. We have several different levels, as you'll see in a minute. Where we'll be utilizing green roofs. because we're at that intersection of Old Georgetown and St. Elmo, I mean, obviously Georgetown is a very busy street, so we would not want to place our garage entrance and loading on there. So as you can see here, we placed it as far away from this intersection as possible, up to the north side of where we have the garage entrance and the loading dock separated. Cognizant of separating them just enough so there's a pedestrian zone in between to kind of help with Vision Zero design of these street sections. Going into the massing, so a quick teaser image, get through and how did we get to this image next. So the first three images here is kind of, hey, we have this block roughly 200 by 100, and how do we get to our design? Don't know. We have our initial build two line setbacks, and also because we are a tower adjacent to another existing 12-story tower on the south of the Eagle Bank building, we are providing a necessary, building tower separation. So take those, squeeze the building and chop it down to get kind of our minimum tower thickness. You get to a point where then we start applying the recommended setbacks for the guidelines, which is a 10-foot setback here at between the third and sixth levels. So here we're showing it at the sixth level, about 65 feet up. And so as you can see, with the recommended guidelines, we're kind of created this wedding cake of a building. And not that it's a bad thing, it creates a great top middle base proportion. What can we do to kind of utilize those proportions, utilize these recommendations, and sculpt the building out of those things. So as you can see in these next three images, we've taken those levels and instead of doing the strict 10-foot, how can we achieve that 10 feet through a varying use of unique geometry and other methods of reducing the bulk of this tower to accommodate and create these levels and proportions that we're striving for. So first was identifying these levels of where we can create that top middle base, and the second is looking at our unique geometry to kind of hit those levels, and then how do we strip that geometry down to really emphasize through additional uses of inset, recessed balconies, and other potential facade design to really stress these levels of the setbacks and the proportion. So we'll go through a couple of images. So this is that prime image looking south down Old Georgetown towards Wisconsin down here. As Doug mentioned, this is the existing height of the building. So you blocks north of us. So coming from the south, you really get a nice pop of our building. It's very, this St. Elmo facade and the former facade are very present, very viewed from anywhere north, really. So that was really, how do we utilize this facade, turn the corner, and kind of integrate these facades and create that non-dynamic, elevation that is eye-popping and serves as that gateway into Bethesda from the north. So you can kind of start seeing here that integration and overlapping and the spread of this chevron geometry as it goes down. We're creating those additional levels of the top, middle here, and then base here, occupied by that ground floor streetscape. And after we've created that architecture, how does that blend in? How does that art connect and articulate with the corner and utilizing that same geometry? And I think that house, that peels out and holds and anchors them. That other view from Wilson Lane, really giving that importance to that corner. So we really wanted to make sure we pushed as far as we could with this corner and pull to really make sure that this is that dynamic ever present. Just kind of go around the building here. See the varying, step backs that we have from the building, step back from St. Elmo. We're stepping back on all four sides of this building, which, really kind of limits the size of the floor plate here, which is kind of one of the struggles and, I guess, challenges of this site. So just going through some of the massing guidelines quickly. Obviously, we've already talked about the base building placement. We are locating the base of the building per the recommended guidelines, full streets. An effort for Bay Street activation and articulation. We have that chevron design that integrates and pulls down and carries down. We've made some changes. Last time you see that we push things back so that there are planes that connect all the way to the base here and also on Old Georgetown Road to kind of give that connectivity from the first floor up to that sixth floor. So it's not much of a podium sitting above a base that creates the overall base. We're trying to integrate all of these aspects into kind of creating that whole piece. In an effort to really increase that activation, obviously we talked about there'll be ground floor retail and amenity space, but having lots of balconies on the street level as well, or the street side as well, to increase that activation on the street. I mentioned the corner treatment, utilizing this geometry on St. Elmo, and how does that work and weave itself into the corner and bring itself and connect to the top. Our goal was to, connect that top, utilize the height of the corner, and connect it with the rest of the penthouse to really create that signature corner. The ideas here is I think really utilizing those additional widths on both sides really helps tie it into the rest of the area. So I mentioned earlier the building step backs. I'll kind of go through all these. We're on the south end page right here. We are providing a 22.5 foot tower separation. It's kind of the minimum half recommended per tower separation. Here is the existing 12-story office building. We are setting back on the page north side an additional 10 feet after the podium, and then various use of geometry on St. Elmo. We are stepping back up to 10 feet by the top there. So we have certain levels at that base middle top. We go from 3 feet setback, 5 feet, and then 10. And then we have a 5 foot setback on Georgetown. This is kind of highlighted here where we're utilizing those step backs in those areas. So this red is where we've trimmed all the way back, where the farthest projecting point is 5 foot, the inset is 10 feet, and then that inset carries all the way down here, that 10 foot setback. On the Old Georgetown side, we are just pushing the whole building, or pushing it back 5 feet to have that connection with the ground floor. So this weave here up to the balconies are sitting, that's inset up the tower to really give that tower a little bit more prominence, connects all the way to the base here. Because of the tightness of the site, the limited footprint, one of the goals of trying to create this top middle base proportion was, obviously it's a challenge, and utilizing a lot of these methods to reduce bulk is our goal to kind of achieve that through the unique geometry of the chevron, the articulate facade with the different integrated and produced, projecting balconies, and then just utilizing this, angled facade that changes at varying heights of the building to really help reduce the perceived bulk of the building. I think one thing with the chevron, especially at ground view, and you can't see it here, is when you're walking down, because of the angles and the recesses, it really helps limit the apparent face. So you're not getting, this 200-foot wall. You're getting only spots coming down because everything's kind of recessed and hidden, so everybody else break up and give a sense of proportion to that facade. The tower top, which kind of briefly mentioned earlier, connects to the top. The goal is, to eventually create a unique design for the top. The idea is to have it open as well, open to the sky in this area to help reduce the perceived bulk of the tower while also connecting all the way to the ground. And that's fully integrated with the design. Obviously, we are striving for a bird-safe design building through use of materials, different materiality through these buildings, punched openings, but also all of these waves and articulation and balconies help create lots of varied shadows and plane changes that will help with that bird-safe. And then just kind of go through a few of our potential precedents that we've been looking at for the basement on top here. So a lot of it is just, how does unique geometry work with different materiality and utilizing balconies and how that carries through to the rest of the buildings and other ways where that geometry is pulled up through the building, creating that dynamic architecture. I'll quickly go through the plans. As I mentioned, we have 3 levels of underground parking. It's very efficient just because of the size of the site. Over here on the ground floor, you can see we're putting, the perceived retail at the corner, and wherever there's not retail, we're going to utilize lobby and amenity space and those taller height ceilings to really create an open, active storefront along Old Georgetown and St. Elmo. And then moving up, so on the left, you have our 2nd through 6th floor plan, this kind of podium level. As you can see, after that first floor, we are starting to already set the building back in this area, creating this mini courtyard that will be green roof. And then as you go up, next is where we start stepping back again. So at the 7th to 14th, we're stepping back fully from our neighbors on the east, and then stepping back on the north here. That's really where the deep recesses of those step backs are starting to be perceived here. And all the way to the top portion, 15 to 17, where we peeled off that last layer and everything's kind of set back as far as it's going. And then additionally, up to the penthouse, we're envisioning penthouse amenity, utilizing as much open space as we can while meeting our green roof mechanical requirements. But as you can see, the architecture is also integrated with the design of this building and gives an additional step back at the penthouse. Overall sections. And that's it. So I don't know if anybody has anything to add from our team. We can open it up for any questions.
I mean, we're just excited about it. Sammy says it's home. I've lived in Bethesda since 1988. I drive down Wilson Lane all the time, so looking at this building. And I think what we were trying to find, Sammy's designed a couple of buildings in Bethesda. So,
Really?
yeah, I know that's a shot. So, one of the challenges, could he bring something really fresh, something different, something that would give us, the Brown family's owned the corner for 60 years. I mean, one of the stories was it was originally a 4-story building, and the parents ran out of money, and they stopped the 3rd story. And Colonial Opticians have been in the building since it opened 60 years ago. So you've got people who are vested in this, that really want to own this long term. So trying to find the balance and to come up with, again, something fresh here. And I hate to give Sammy a compliment. But I think he's come up with something really great. And I think, there's a technical term. We like to do doodads at the top of our buildings, if anybody's noticed. I think we've got a huge opportunity to do something that's really going to be cool at the top while maintaining, what we need as a landlord. We want to have the greatest outdoor deck in the history of mankind, 175 feet up. The views are breathtaking. So I think we found, from a massing standpoint, the balance of all that. And I think, as you all know, this building's going to get better with detail. Stage where it's yellow and a few balconies at this stage. This building's going to get better, much better with articulation. So thanks for your.
Piggyback to that. I mean, I think if you really take the guidelines applied into this building, you get a kind of wedding cake kind of building. There's like, it doesn't really make a great architecture. How you take that and kind of compose a building that kind of creates like great buildings in the past. You have a base, middle, and top. So our attempt was like, trying to stitch planes together and stitch it with the balconies and so forth. So it looks like a single composition that it basically building has a life and then does moves. And then we orient our balconies through more green open space, allows us to do that. And then, and I think instead of taking it, 10 feet on one level, we're taking that 10 feet with a couple different levels to create the top and base. Okay. So I think, we are very excited how this building is going to kind of get its bones. I think next stage is like kind of render it, put materiality to it. How do we take it next level? Okay. I mean, I think this is our legacy. We see this is, also Doug's glasses. This is our neighborhood. We live here. We're proud of it. And, this is next to our two other buildings. Bainbridge is on the left and Cheval is on the right. And both those buildings before that, we still try to get base, middle, and a top. I mean, this is what we believe in a good architecture, modern, traditional. These are the things you need to do in order to be urban and neighborhood friendly and so forth.
And those are good buildings.
Huh?
Those are good buildings. This is better.
Might have to do with developer.
Older we get, it's like a wine. It's like a wine. Older you get.
Oh, no, we're so old, we're fermenting well now, Sammy, is that what you're saying?
You can't make a job better than the client wants. So,
I like that.
praise. This is not the place for a background building. And, it's active, but not silly. I can't wait to see the materiality. I think that if materiality were as active as the form, I think this is the one place where you do it. I mean, I think, go crazy and then step back, but it's not
Did
the
you
time.
pay him to say?
No, I mean, no, we've tried this before. So anyway, it's a nice job. I do have one something about the architecture I'd like to suggest. I wonder first, is there any way that this the angularity in it's the bones of the massing, can that meet the ground? Because the first floor geometry is entirely fixed, and it's not part, the building articulation doesn't hit the ground. So that's one thing I wonder.
It does.
If
There was a comment, we heard it before, and then we tried to attempt part of the plane, bring it back to the base of the building.
is
So
not seeing.
Yeah, it's we tried to, it's hard with this basic massing to really emphasize that, but this plane and this plane here comes all the way down. We showed kind of like some openings for potential, storefront, but this plane comes all the way down and has that connection. Same thing with this plane here. It comes down. So like when I show, that's sticky, but let me go to that's where this articulation on the ground floor is coming from is, so wherever these angles are, that is connecting all the way.
And that works great on St. Elmo.
Yeah.
The scale of those, because of the repetition, can be, they can be smaller, but scale that you show. On Old Georgetown, I don't know how you do it, but if that angularity could be emphasized more, or if there's some way to make it more intense on Old Georgetown Road. I was thinking back to the view from the northwest, the massing view. Almost there. Yeah. Oh. It was the, yeah, there. That if the angle were emphasized and you could and the light were to play off that differently. I don't know, are you giving up GLA for that? I don't, but, I'd be interested in seeing how that worked out.
And that's one of the big places where materiality may be.
Maybe that's
One of the bigger contributors. 'Cause we're struggling with, no surprise, that corner unit is that's the unit.
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure out how to make sure it's got a lot of angularity coming down St. Elmo. If you put a lot of angularity also on Georgetown,
It's a
you lose
lot,
so
but
much of the
small
unit.
scale.
Yeah. Right.
One larger move.
So
Anyway,
let's take a look at it.
you know,
We heard it before.
as an architect, I know the landscape architect, but still. And then, of course, the materiality on the corner. So one day we'll.
Let me go ahead. As the old timer on the DAP panel, one thing that has been a problem with other projects is this issue of cantilevering over the sidewalks. And the DAP's pushed back at it, the Bethesda community's pushed back at it. And here we have it here. I think it's very clever how the geometry of, let's call it the midsection and the top marry together, but you do have the cantilever. And the cantilever has been a problem on some of the projects where we've spoken out against it, and here we have it here on this project.
Why is it's been the
Shade and shadow, creating a lid over it. I think Paul will testify to that as an issue. I think it is an issue, and it's an issue that really needs to be talked about. I think the other issue is if you go to your view looking down Wilson, if you wouldn't mind. I think the end of the building needs more resolution and could have even more impact than it does right now. The aspect ratio doesn't seem quite right to me. You know, the width of the building to the heights of the building. I think it has something to do with the articulation. And then I'll also take a contrarian view to my colleague down at the end of the table, that I think the ins and outs along the sidewalk on St. Elmo is not an urban design response. It doesn't allow good visibility of what's happening within the building. I think a cleaner, straighter facade would be, in fact, be better. So those are my three brief comments.
I appreciate the sculptural facade that you are working on. I would be curious to see mathematically if you were to do straight setbacks, does that equal to the angular shape of the setbacks that are right now? Just to build up your argument, right? My biggest concern is the setback next to the adjacent property. It's only 22.5 feet. And the building height is 175. My concern there is with light and air. This is a multifamily property. I looked into the fire separation distance. You will have concerns there because it's less than 30 feet. First of all, it's less than have to set back per the guidelines, but in terms of building code, you know that we usually try to do 30 so that you can do unlimited number of windows on that side, since you're going to have units all around the building, right, going up. So I do understand that it's a very skinny and long side, so it is a challenge. I do appreciate the dynamics of the facade that you're trying to work with. So also the second part with that courtyard on the what level? Second, okay. You also have exhaust and intake for the garage there, so you don't have a lot of to work with in terms of light, air, right?
That's actually, it's gonna be green roof. That's not gonna be an active corner.
Yeah, it's more just fire retention and green roof, not active.
I mean, well, I heard, let me try to respond. I mean, I think guidelines is minimum 22 feet, 6 inches. That's what we're doing, right? And I think in terms of building code and others like building next door, they're building, you can build next to almost 5 feet, 10 feet. It only dictates how many percentage of glass you can get.
Yes, I understand,
Nothing
but that's what I
I
mentioned.
used to occupy the building next door. last 10 years. My office was there, office building. That's a failed office building. Right now, currently, maybe 20-30% occupied. Most likely, it's gonna get redeveloped. Basically, it's gonna be probably similar size building going into that site. Right now, basically, that building is empty and typical floor section is like less than 9 feet. So it's not a great office building. So most likely it's going to be something similar to our residential building. There will be another residential building with a base and setback of like 45 feet between the buildings.
Well, we don't know that until that.
I mean, we are most likely like taking a guess, okay, at this point.
And knowing that developers always want to maximize the leasable area, probably not gonna go for the maximum setback, so.
Though I could give them some credit this time because we've seen other projects where they haven't done the building setback, so they are doing it here. So I congratulate you for at least doing on.
Well, I mean, and then there's the size is very limited, okay? I mean,
I
this
see
is
that.
like similar building in terms of mass was Bainbridge building. Okay? So you set this much back, you end up like whatever, 60, 70 feet. If you go more than that, I mean, building becomes
No, I
impossible to
understand that,
build,
and
you
I
know?
see that. I acknowledge that this is a challenging site. I do appreciate the sculptural facade that you're trying to do. I don't have an issue with the overhang on the old Georgetown facade. Old
I'm
Georgetown.
talking St. Elmo.
San Elmo, yes, it's a minimum 15 setbacks, so you are projecting over.
Yeah, I mean, we are creating small little overhangs right here.
How much is the overhang? How much?
3 feet at the point. So
Yeah,
it's,
on that elevation, on St. Elmo, you get the impression of bay windows.
Hmm.
It's more of kind of a bay window overhanging. And I think that's appropriate in an urban environment to have that. It's this old Georgetown road that I would agree with Rod on. And I think it's just, if there's some way to break that up or to bring it down to the ground or to have, the base be part of essentially the whole podium, I think that would help. The other thing that I'll just say, I appreciate the work that's gone on this, and I think it's a very nice building. I wonder, the old Georgetown, I mean, I guess you're putting all your eggs into the basket of, we're gonna show you some great materials someday on old Georgetown, and then old Georgetown will blow your socks off, because right now it's not. It's really, I mean, it's this is a massing model, but it's just plain. It's very, very plain. And I wonder, with all that articulation that's going on the St. Elmo side, if some of it could come across, and particularly maybe, I guess that's east of your balconies, even if it's some of that could be carried partially on that portion of that
Can I
elevation.
ask you a favor, because we all argue what's east and west, can you actually point to what
Yeah, well, go back to that
Go back to
Wilson view.
just stay with one view, so we don't get lost. You don't know the arguments about what.
Here we go.
Southeast, west on this site. 'Cause
I mean,
it's
I just.
At an angle, so I just want to know what you're talking
I
about.
see this stuff going on right here.
Yep.
Why couldn't that go on right here? I see this stuff going on right here. Could there be something there? You know what I'm saying?
No,
And so that,
Yeah, that's helpful.
so that some of this articulation could be brought around a little bit to, I
can
understand how this tower is trying to be an object on the corner, and I think that's very nice.
No, but going on the other side of the balconies in front,
Yeah.
of the old Georgetown balcony.
Yeah. And I don't even know if it
Especially
needs
as
to
you
be
get.
as
No,
articulated
but
as that
the
side,
point
but
being
just
is
something.
if you bring the flavor of it around.
Yeah.
This
Especially on
image is
that
also misleading, okay?
sound,
This building is
you
like,
would never be misleading.
I mean, the building is 65 feet wide, okay?
Yeah,
And then,
yeah.
175 feet long that way. If you look at this angle, almost like, this building as fat as, it's not,
Yeah.
okay? Actually, all materiality and all that kind of stuff will come in the
Well,
next episode.
And I agree. I mean, once we see it,
Yeah, we have to balance. I
We'll
mean,
see-
if,
we'll see the
depending on
materials.
where we go with all the materials,
Yeah.
you can overdo it, but at least I couldn't understand when we
Yeah,
had a
that's what I
conference
was-
call, what exactly you were saying, because if you look at the base and you look at the top and you bring some of those elements around, but that's something I think, Sandra, we can consider, just, you know, get with the materiality of what we're.
At the end of the day, that facade is like really skinny facade, and you're gonna get the proportions. If you build a model and put it in
Right.
front of you, you'll see it.
Want to do that?
We'll do it. We'll cut a laser model, no problem.
It's not like the old days, you're supposed to 3D. Model pops up.
Come back tomorrow morning and it's
We
ready.
don't have the interns in the basement.
No, you just send it to ABC, they just electronically cut the laser model, you know, $800.
I guess we'll bring in the model.
We do have a member of the public on the line. Mr. Alexander, did you want to provide any comments?
That's Jack who put Jack's part of it.
Oh, he is. Okay, I'm sorry. I got wrong information.
He's not officially a member of the
Good.
public. You can keep him muted. We don't want to hear from him.
We thought, wow, this is an emergency.
Oh.
Sometimes. When he's in the street.
Yeah, I think we're looking forward to seeing the next iteration of the design and more of materiality and rendering, so.
So at this point, because it is sketched, does the DAP feel comfortable having them move forward? Straw vote, or would you like to see it again before we move on to site? In regards to some of the comments on the old Georgetown facade?
I mean, this is good.
Yes.
Site plan?
I would like to see more work on Old Georgetown, to be honest with you.
Okay, second sketch.
More confidence. I never mind seeing.
So I'll weigh in on the overhang. I think it would be helpful, I think, from a staff and planning board perspective, to see more resolution on how the old Georgetown facade meets the ground, to address some of the comments raised today. I think that when you zoomed in on the model, you can read the mullions on that corner piece, which make it look less like driving. So I think some, well, I mean, it looks like a side.
No, that's the
elevation.
problem with this. No, it looks like a solid, yeah, I totally get
So
you.
I think it would help you, and I feel like you're already doing this anyway. I think it would help you with staff and the board and the community to have more, not that we don't all share Jonathan's confidence in your ability to get there. I think getting there now would make the whole ride easier, would be my suggestion to the band.
When is the tap meeting now?
More material.
Well, have you submitted your applications? I don't think you've submitted your
Very
applications.
short.
So that's perfect. So I don't think we're meeting I guess we're meeting in July. So we would next meet in July. So you would have 2 weeks to submit, and then we would meet again in September. But I think you're far enough along that you could meet while the sketch plan review is underway.
Right, that's what I was.
So I
Right,
think if you met in September, I think you'd be fine. So if
Yeah,
you
for staff
submitted-
report.
you submit in July, August, September, October, you're going to the board in October. I think because of the level that we're not saying redo the whole mess. We're saying, look at this one piece. I think you need.
Be like us
it would
coming
not
back in
mess your
September.
Schedule.
Coming back in September would work with what you.
And so I would recommend.
We'll come hang in. Can't promise you an $800 model in September.
I don't think we need an $800 model. I
You
think.
want a $10,000, you want a really good one. We'll come back in September. What are you looking?
Does that work with the panel? I mean, it's the panel's decision.
Yes.
They want to come back in July, that's fine. But I'm here in September. Is that what I'm hearing?
Either one.
Yeah.
We can come July.
Yeah, I mean,
It depends on.
we're gonna come back.
Talk among yourselves.
We will come back. If we can get it done in 2 weeks so that we can hit the July meeting, it's easier. Worst case, we'll come back in September.
And I will get these notes up online to help you with that shortly.
Thank you. Cool.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
guys.
Appreciate your time.
Good to Steve.